There he is, Coach Thomas,
What's up?
throwing the shakas. You're now officially no longer an Instagram rookie. You figured it out.
I figured it out.
You know what's funny was Mike Rooney was doing one yesterday with George Horton. The hardest time getting on. They had practiced a bunch because obviously Coach Horton's never done it before, and he goes, I thought I knew what I was doing, but I clearly didn't. So, but you figured it
Technology,
out.
man.
You figured it out.
Here we are.
Here we are. Here we are. What's the weather like down in your neck of the woods?
Oh, man. Beautiful. Last couple of days have been unbelievable. Like 75.
Yeah.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
A little hotter up near you, yeah?
Yeah, it was low 80s today. So,
Yeah.
it's crazy. You go just a little bit up the 80 and it changes. The weather changes dramatically.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I love it. I'm ready for summer, man. I'm all about the hot weather.
Yeah, we all are. We are all ready for it. So, well, speaking of all, let's get on it. Let's introduce you and get going. Yeah, you're right. The beard is on point. It's looking solid there.
Oh, man. This is the Q beard.
The Q beard. Well, I started doing this, Brett, as kind of a way to give back and talk some baseball. While we're all at home, and my hair went from like perfect, no problems, to now it's starting to flare out. So
Oh, yeah.
this is the COVID haircut and everything.
Well, there's a reason I'm wearing a hat. I mean, look at this.
Yeah, yeah.
It's out of control.
That's why
Out
I'm
of
doing
control.
it as well. Well, let's set the intro for you, my man, and we'll get rolling. We got Brett Thomas with the Catching Academy joining us today, and as I said, I'm trying to reach out to people that I know that I've got a lot of respect for, that have been in the game a long time, that do some tremendous stuff. And Brett was a Division I player at Cal Berkeley, coached Division I junior college, which is where I ran into him. I don't know how many years ago at San Mateo.
Yeah,
And
it's been a
then,
while.
he started his own catching academy. And, one of the things that I was really impressed with, Brett, was you were one of the first people to really start a catching only program. Everybody's got a hitting coach and a pitching coach, but not many guys had a catching coach, and you were one of the first people that really did that. So talk to me about, why you started it and kind of where it's gone from there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, catching's been a passion of mine for sure. And as I was coaching at College of San Mateo, and it just got to a point where it was getting a little frustrating seeing the landscape of the game and guys just coming in not prepared. You kind of with travel ball and everything like that. Guys jump from team to team. There's a lot less accountability with a lot of that stuff, and as I started to see, all players seem to not always be prepared, but catchers especially just had no baseline to work with whatsoever. And I was fortunate. I had a great catching coach at Cal who's on here. Shout him out, Tony Arnrich,
Mm-hmm.
who's the catching coordinator for the Mariners now. And he's a guy who obviously loved catching. It was my biggest passion in my life, but he brought a lot of why to what we were doing, and really, a little deeper dive into what we're doing and why we're doing it. And my passion just grew and grew. And, I've always loved working with catchers since. And so, now we're fortunate, working with a bunch of guys all the time. And it's, just what I love to do. I never feel like I'm working when I'm with the guys.
And I think one of the really unsung aspects of what you do, Brett, is catching is such a tough position. You don't see many guys that are drafted that 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 make it very long, because the intricacies of it are so tough. There was one point, and I hope I don't mess this up. There was one point where the only high school catcher to ever make it to free agency, the last time I checked, was Joe Mauer of the Twins. And every other high school
Wow.
drafted catcher never made it to free agency. And that just shows you how tough it is. And now you see big league teams having catching coordinators on their big league staff. And I think that shows just the importance and how neglected it was of a position for coaching.
Totally. And I think, the coolest thing that's happened to catching is just the wave of analytics that's come through. I mean, it was kind of like StatCast was the first in like 2015, I think, came up with a legit pitch framing stat. And now we have even deeper dive into it. And, it was like all we ever cared about when we thought about a catcher was what's his throwout percentage. You look in the big leagues, it was like you didn't really even think it. Some guys were great receivers and, I mean, 20 years ago, if you didn't hit 275, you didn't really have a job. Didn't matter what you did.
Right.
So, you look at how the positions evolved in terms of being able to quantify, receiving and how big that's been to be able to tell our guys, hey, here's the deal. We've got data behind, how you receive, right? We've always got data behind. Everybody just always looked at the stat sheet and it'd be like, percent runners thrown out, pass balls. That was like all we ever looked at, and for some reason, a pass ball is not an error. So, you see guys that have 1,000 fielding percentage, but they got 15 pass balls. But,
Right.
I think the evolution of analytics with catching has been huge. I think reevaluating, what's important. Like I said, I was so fortunate to be taught when I was in school a lot of this stuff that's being taught now. And now it's, we're really able to back it up with data. And I think that's been the coolest thing to see. And now obviously we've seen a dive in batting average in general in the big leagues, but we've definitely seen the legit defensive catchers where it's like guys are hitting like literally 200
Right.
in the big leagues, and some of them can't even throw anybody out. It's like just receive and get strikes, and that's all we care.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's jump into some questions. And if you guys have questions for Brett, go ahead and put them in that comment section below and we'll get to them. The first one is just a real basic one. But what are the characteristics that you look for in a catcher and that you really emphasize in your coaching of catchers?
So I would say, kind of if I revert back to when I was coaching in college and recruiting what I'm looking for in a catcher, number one, I'm looking for a high motor. I mean, I want a guy that's moving back there. When you see guys, hustling to back up bases, guys that are, getting out in front of the play before it happens, those guys that are out on the infield grass on every single play, those guys that are just always moving and want to go. There's a quality to catchers where you can almost tell that they want a ball thrown in the dirt in a big situation and they want a guy to run on them. And, in a sense, being offensive as a defensive guy, they're looking to make the play as opposed to just being, a goalie back there and just trying to make sure everything stays status quo. But in terms of, now and what we're looking for, obviously with younger guys, we're just looking for guys that are willing to commit to a process. And I think it's so important. Everything we do has a process to it. I mean, my first lesson with every single kid is exactly the same. It's the same exact stuff that we have to teach at the bottom. We're just trying to get a baseline and trying to progress from there. But, we really tell people all the time, we're not in the business of tune-ups. We're in the business of development programs, and we want players that want to be a part of a development program and continue to get better. So, I think it's fun now because when you're recruiting in college, you tried to get the guys you really wanted that kind of fit what you were looking for. And now you have a challenge of kids that, they need to be coached up in so many different levels to be able to say, hey, can I get them, to a position where somebody is going to look at them and go, that's the guy that I want.
Yeah.
And that's not always just how does he receive, block, throw, that's, how do they carry themselves? How do they act on the field? How do they interact with their teammates? Even just guys that walk into the shop, and I'm lucky we got great other instructors in there and they're all on the same page. It's, guys are like, really, one of the other instructors will look at one of my catches and be like, oh, really? You don't say what's up over here, man? Say what's up, and just getting guys to understand the culture of baseball and the freedom to be who you are and be around people and have some fun. So it's a fun challenge to kind of dive into that with kids.
You talked about blocking, throwing, and receiving. I don't know if there is such a thing, but in your mindset, what are the order of importance on those things?
we have a ton of, again, analytics gives us so much data now to prove a lot of stuff, but it's ingrained in my brain. I've always been so big on receiving. I mean, I have a huge passion for it. I loved doing it. And then I love teaching it. But it's, it's the thing we're going to do a majority of the time. And stamped in my brain is a tweet from Rob Smith, the head coach at Ohio University. It was in 2014. And he tweeted, I tallied all of the chances my catchers had as a staff. They had 5,000 chances. And he said 88% of the time they received, 10% of the time they blocked, and 2% of the time they threw. And it was always kind of my thinking that was just a really good stamp to say, okay, like we got this thing flipped on its head. I'm going to showcases and all they want to see is 3 pop times and see you later. And, we're not evaluating guys on what's important. So priority is always receiving. I think even when you look situationally with guys on base and, you're seeing a lot of different things happen now with different stances, one knee stances, things like that get guys in better position to receive because, we're saying, is the value of a guy moving from first to second on a block, more important than flipping a 1-1 count to 1-2 instead of 2-1? Sure. I mean, I think that's, as any pitching guy would say, I mean, I think priority is, we spend all of our time with runners on base, focusing on the guys on base. And the guy we're actually working on is right there standing next to us, and we're not really focusing on him with 100% intent. So, don't get me wrong, blocking, throwing are extremely important. We want to be as efficient at all of them as we can. But the reality is, we just get so caught up in a, station to station idea of that runner can't move from there to there and move from there to there. But the reality is, hey, maybe he moves to second, but again, now we got the count in our advantage, and my pitcher can go really make a pitch to try to strike this guy out, and it's not going to be relevant anyways. Yeah,
one of the things I did when I was recruiting that a lot of people didn't understand was I would always get if you're playing 7 innings, I would just put 1 to 7, and I would put a little tally next to each inning, and the tally was how many times the catcher just dropped the ball. Because to me, one of the things that a scout told me one time is a good catcher is like a good umpire. You never know he's there. You only notice the bad umpires when they make bad calls. You only notice the bad catchers when they're dropping balls or they're going to the backstop and their pitcher just keeps shaking them off, that kind of thing. So that was one thing that I always put a big premium on was just did they catch the ball? That's the name of the position.
Absolutely. And when I was at Cal, Coach Esker, I mean, that was his thing. He's like, hey, here's what he's like, it's not fair. He goes, it's not fair. But what I like out of my catchers is I don't want to notice you.
Yeah.
He's like, the only time you notice catchers is if a ball goes to the backstop, if they clank one, if they throw a ball into center field. I mean, that's the only time we actually notice catchers. A guy can catch an incredible game and you can be like, man, what did you even do today? I mean, it can be that boring. And again, that was always something that stuck with me and kind of really digs into a little bit deeper of the idea that, we're not always going to get credit for what we do. And really that the credit is in the wins and the losses. And that's the important thing that we're, always working on. So, I mean, I think you hit it nail on the head. I mean, does it just, look easy for him to just be back there and play the position?
One of the questions that we just got over, Brett, was when you were in college, specifically, what were the things you talked about catchers just being unprepared for when you're at the college level?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a wide range of things in terms of that. But number one, physically not prepared. And that's, not even – obviously, guys always kind of come into college where they're not, maybe not strong enough yet and things like that. And it's not really any of that. It's really more the idea of like, they don't really have a philosophy or an understanding of what they are trying to do when they're receiving or blocking or throwing. And, they're really just back there trying to do what you're saying. Can I just catch the ball and make it look easy? And you really kind of feel like you start with square one. But I think, even worse than that is, the preparation of all the other stuff that comes with it and the leadership of the position and understanding how important your body language is. I mean, we know everybody's looking at us the whole time and just an understanding of that. And, there's, a lot of great people out there coaching youth baseball. So I'm not, generalizing everybody when I say this, but I mean, the idea is that, you play for how many different teams, you bump from team to team. As a college coach, you're trying to get the best players. So the best players, they're going to go to all these things, all these teams want to say, hey, we got, Nick Enriquez, he's going to Stanford. We don't want to put that on our website. But if I yell at him, if I hold him accountable to something, he might leave and I might lose that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of created a culture where these guys were really able to just kind of roll into the dugout. I mean, how many high school tournaments I go to and you see like pitchers literally like pitch and then they throw their sandals on and walk out of the dugout. And I'm just like, what is going on? And I think that's more of where we started the Catching Academy, with the idea of like, yeah, we can physically prepare them at a really high level now. But at the end of it is, can we, get them to understand what work ethic it is? Can we get them to understand what a routine is? Can we get them to understand, what leadership is? What does it mean to be a good teammate? All of those things that I think, we expect out of all of our athletes, but we know that the catcher is held to a higher standard.
No question. No question. That's a great answer, response to that. Ethan asks, how can you stand out on a field as a catcher?
Man, that's a good question. I think, the biggest thing for me is, again, good baseball people are going to have you stand out in the simplicity of what you do. So, you're not, if a coach, is really looking for something extra from a catcher, he's probably not having the right mindset for a good catcher to want to play for him anyways. But I think one thing that we can do is just be aggressive. And I think, we always tell guys, when you go to a showcase, and you're doing a coach pitch game or a scrimmage or whatever, like throw the ball around the yard, try to backpick people.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to try to backpick a guy at third, tell all your infielders before you get out there, like, hey man, I'm backpicking all the time. And I see little gap. We just want to see aggression. And again, playing the position a little bit more offensive, I think is something that definitely stands out. And obviously there's confidence to that. I think, we actually work on how we throw the ball back to the pitcher. I think there's a rhythm to how we throw the ball back to the pitcher that really makes us look, comfortable, fluid, like we know what we're doing. And, we're not always going to get the chance to block 4 balls with a guy on third and really impress somebody, or throw 3 guys out with a pitcher that's actually going to give me a chance in a showcase. You're not going to have all those things. So if I go back there and man, I make it look easy and I receive well, and then have some rhythm throwing it back, and, communication with my pitcher, whether it be verbal or nonverbal, just all those little things, I think, culminate into what people consider intangibles. So, intangibles are visible. It's not like it's, we don't see them. I think just showcasing that is really important.
Black belt baseball, for your catchers, what are your first 3 pillars of being a good catcher? What do you have on your list for the top 3 things you want from your catcher, Brett?
To play this position. They've got to understand that, we've got to work harder than everybody. We've got to be on a whole nother level of higher standards in terms of who we are as a teammate and a player. And I think that's the most important. Other than that, I think every kid's going to have different strengths. So I don't really like to peg anybody to say, hey, here's the 3 things I want everybody to have. I want everybody to be a good teammate. I want everybody to have good body language, exude confidence, really lift guys up, play the game hard, all the basic stuff. But in terms of the physical aspects of what we're looking for, each guy's different. We want everybody to be as efficient at everything as we can, but some guys are going to, receive a low pitch a little bit better. Some guys are going to receive a pitch off their right knee better. Some guys are going to throw better. Some guys are going to block better. How do we maximize everything that they have?
Mm-hmm.
And not really pegging them to any sort of certain thing physically that makes them, have to be somebody that they're not.
The next question we have, and it was actually one of the ones I wanted to talk to you about, Brett, is catchers and calling games. When I was coaching in college, the coaches wanted to take control of the game. When I was at Dartmouth, one of the things we did is we didn't allow freshmen to call the game because we wanted to teach them how to call a game. And then they eventually, as their sophomore, junior, senior year rolled around, they ended up calling their own games. But talk to me about learning how to call a game as a catcher. So that when you go in and your high school coach is ready to, start calling the game, talk to us about how do you develop that awareness, really.
Well, I mean, the best way to develop it is experience. And unfortunately, these days, these guys don't really get a lot of experience. And that's, I mean, I think college is kind of a tough one for me because, it's like, I used to always tell guys, they'd be like, oh, coach hates me, coach, whatever. It's like, dude, coach is, living in Orinda and his kids are in a great school district. Like, you think he's really concerned about you? Like, they're focused on what is important to help them be successful and hold on to their job. And a lot of times, with that pressure, we kind of want to put the pressure on ourselves and not feel the need to blame somebody else. And I think that's a greater pressure. That's a life pressure. That's something where it's like, man, like my kids like living here. They have friends here, and that with the college. At the younger levels, I think we just need to take a better approach to finding a way to teach how to call the games and just understand the importance of failure. I mean, I see coaches call crappy pitches all the time. I think that it's, that Tony said this the other day on a Zoom call on Saturday where, it's like the coach calls crappy pitches all the time. I mean, the pitcher doesn't look in the dugout and say, what the hell? And, now we have, like, if kids calling their own game, coaches yelling at them, like, why are we calling that pitch? And, it takes some planning and some foresight. And, when you have a little bit of scouting report or you talk about what's important with this pitcher and what makes them successful, we've got to put in the work as coaches to prepare them for that, just like any other challenge. So I think it's a little bit more time consuming, obviously. It's something where guys just say, oh, it's easier for me to just sit on the bucket and give the signs and go. And I think that, I think catchers not having that feeling of pressure and working through that and failing and understanding what it takes to do that. So what we do now when we talk to the guys about it, because, again, like it's almost all of them, it's out of their hands, is that we just want them thinking before the pitch is called. Mm-hmm. So, we want them to say, all right, like he called fastball out here. We catch the pitch, we throw it back, and we say, man, I think I'd go fastball out here. And then you look at the coach and you pick up the sign, and at least you're thinking the game. And then because you're thinking it, you have an understanding where you can go, okay, I think I'm, coach, I don't know why we called that pitch because, I was thinking this. And then a coach is like, okay, that makes sense. I get where you came from there, and you can have a legitimate conversation with your coach about it. But nowadays, I mean, they're just in straight, like, look over, sign, put it down. I mean, there's no thought whatsoever. And again, I think there's a little bit of the idea that, we've got to kind of let guys be free with their thoughts.
Sure.
Like, there's just not enough of that, right? I mean, I don't know if that sounds right, but just the idea of, like, they got to be thinking. Yeah. And we just take too much of that away from catchers, and we don't give them the ability to think about, why am I calling this pitch? I'm tuned into my pitcher's emotions right now. I'm tuned into what's going well for him. What do I need to do? If I'm brain dead to all that, man, we're in for, some serious trouble. So, I mean, even when I was in college, I mean, they used to call, talk to the pitcher. It's like they'd call and be like, and you look down and say, oh, go talk to the pitcher. It's like, man, like, I don't know. I mean, I think in college we talked about a little different, but at the younger ages, let them play, let them learn. Failure is the greatest thing for them.
And I think that one thing you just kind of hit the nail on the head, Brett, is as a coach, our job is to teach the game. And at the lower levels, if I were coaching at a lower level, you got to teach the catchers on, the pitcher's strengths, stay with their strengths, forget about what the hitter's doing, stay with their strengths, but you got to teach them why you're calling a certain pitch, and that's the only way they're going to grow as a player, because you're obviously not going to coach them the rest of their lives, but you want to set them up so the next place that they go, they've learned that skill.
Well, and the reality is some of these coaches coaching youth teams don't don't know what they're doing in terms of calling pitches. It's just fastball, breaking ball in the dirt, back to the fastball. And
Right.
it's like, you know, I mean, how do we utilize the fastball in as many ways as possible? I mean, it's like that old adage of, you know, like, you know, how many times can I go through the lineup without showing them a pitch, right? Can I go fastballs only the first time through, and then I mix in my changeup the second time through, and then I throw the breaking ball? And, you know, I get thrown back to one summer when I was playing summer ball up in Canada. And, I mean, we had a pitcher that could just spot fastballs. We literally went 2 starts in a row. He went 7 innings and 8 innings shutout baseball. We did not throw an off-speed pitch because he could go in, out, off, up. I mean, he had 5 pitches in one, and we don't really allow the pitcher to have that, you know, idea and understanding of that pitch, because we just go to the 12-year-old loopy breaking ball that nobody can hit at that level anyways.
Yeah, and one of the greatest signs a catcher can ever give is just a shake, because when that pitcher shakes, that hitter's like, whoa, wait a minute. What?
Absolutely.
He just shook to something.
Yep.
Talk about the catcher-pitcher relationship, building that relationship with your pitcher, just in practice, in the bullpen, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another one of those things that goes so much deeper than anything else. I mean, number one, you've got to be a standard that people respect and trust, you know, to be able to have any sort of relationship built. So just as a whole, again, being a good teammate, you know, doing things the right way is really important. Number two is taking it off the field too. I think, you know, and I remember all the time. I mean, all my friends, like as I was playing, you know, all my good friends always tended to be catchers and pitchers, because catchers, we obviously hung around each other all the time, and pitchers, you know, we obviously always had that relationship in the bullpens and things like that. So I think when you have a relationship outside the game, that you're going, hanging out with, you're grabbing dinner with, you know, as kids, you're, you know, going to the pizza party, you're hanging around the pitchers and not just, you know, staying cliquey with whatever you're doing. But, you know, that relationship is really built on a long-term, you know, sort of a deal. And we're given so much time in baseball. You've got, you know, fall ball, which is, you know, I mean, it's probably only a couple months, but it sure seems like it's 6 or 8.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's really a time where, like, we just got to lay foundation for who we are, what we're about, and then get guys to understand the trust and what we're trying to accomplish, you know, as a whole, you know, with our catching core and our pitching staff together. And then really, I mean, again, it always goes back to understanding guys a little bit more, you know, not just the idea of like, hey man, you're pulling your front side off. You know, it's more the idea of like, you know, walking out there and understanding the difference between each guy's personality and knowing what guys you can say, hey man, like, bear down, let's go, I need you to be better. And what guys you say, you know, hey man, like, that chick in the second row looks pretty good, doesn't she? And, you know, just kind of being able to throw them off and understand what makes each guy tick. And there's too much of, see it a lot with young leaders. They like to be the same all the time, rather than really understanding who they're leading. And that's 100% it with pitchers, and understanding what guys, you know, need tons of encouragement, and what guys aren't going to buy the fluff, you know, that what guys that you really can't just say, hey man, you're good. You know, you just go out there and say, hey man, you suck. I hate to tell you, you're sucking right now, dude. What do we got to do? How are we going to get better? And then obviously the guys that you really got to pump up and, you know, give a bunch of confidence to, but just really understanding, you know, what is each guy like, what makes them tick, what makes them different than everybody else. And there's such an incredible feeling when you're receiving that, when somebody like remembers something, you know, that's really non-baseball related, and they're able to bring that into the game. There's like, it's just an incredible feeling of understanding, like, this person knows me so much better than I even think. Now I'm on. Let's go. Where are we going? I'm following.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, you know, and one of the things I love about what you're doing, Brett, and we talked about this, you don't do a lot of camps. What you do is you're more of like a 6 to 8 week program where you actually work with the players on a weekly basis, because it's not just, I think you said that you're not just looking to do a patch job, but you're trying to build them up as catchers, as leaders. And one of the first things you see on your website is that's what you talk about. And I think that's so key with what you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean that's really, we started it with the idea of no camps. I mean, I didn't want to do a camp. We started doing a camp 3 years ago, and it was really a combination of a lot of people from outside the area, like contacting us on Instagram and saying, "Hey, do you guys do camps?" And we didn't want to be keyholed into one area. We wanted to try to get to more guys, and then also even the guys that I work with on a regular basis, I want them to come to the camp, and we've got different voices there, and we've got professional catching coordinators, and we've got professional catchers, we've got college coaches. I mean, we've got such a great staff out there that I want them to be around other guys. I want them to hear different things. Somebody might say something differently that resonates a little bit more for them. So that's what I've always loved about the camp. But originally it was like anti-camp because I hated the idea that like people were like, how many kids can we get at this thing? And let's just, throw as much info as we can. And we have no clue, what they do with this info. They had a good time and they get in the car and they go home with mom and they're pumped. But, again, we're not in a business of babysitting. We're trying to develop players. So if I know a kid can commit to all our classes now have gone to 12 weeks. Every one of our classes is 12 weeks long. We want guys to understand that there's a process in what we're doing. And look, the best guys I have come every single week all year round, whether it be an individual lesson or in the class. They're always, wanting to be there. It's something they look forward to. It's a passion that they really want to be at. And, again, I do get the calls, the text messages of, hey, Billy's got a tournament this weekend and he needs a quick tune-up. Can you get him in? It's like, well, but what does that mean? Like, we don't even have a basis for what a tune-up actually means. I'm,
right.
Not going to snap my fingers and all of a sudden he's going to throw a 1-9 down there. Mm-hmm. We gotta really build from the ground up. So, that's a big thing for us is really, developmental programs.
And that's one of the things I really love and why I wanted you to come on and talk to everybody. This is something that I think is really important that really doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the relationship between the catcher and the umpire. Because the catcher, obviously, you need to have a good rapport with that umpire. Talk to me, Brett, about establishing a rapport, whether you're on a travel team and you just show up, you have no idea who this guy is, or you're at the high school level or even the college level and you see this guy on a consistent basis. Talk about that rapport building with an umpire.
I mean, obviously we want to be, extremely outgoing in terms of, how we interact with them in the beginning of the day. Really, again, kind of goes back to just, life skills, look them in the eye, stick your hand out, obviously shake their hand, good firm handshake, introduce yourself, bring up some small talk, try to get comfortable with each other. And I think, as you start to see the same umpires, it's really, really important that guys' names. Mm-hmm. I think that, even when you obviously in high school, travel ball, college, you're getting a majority of the same guys. But when they remember your name or you remember their name, that goes such a long way. And honestly, that even goes to the point of like when I'd see a crew and I'm like, man, I forget this guy's name. Like I would tell my head coach, I'd say, hey, I need you to bring back the home plate umpire's name from the meeting, because I don't remember it and I don't want to go up there without knowing his name. So important to introduce yourself, and if you know their name, hey, Nick, Brett, good to see you again. And I always reiterate the idea of accentuate your name too, because, you have a handful of, 20, 25 umpires you work with. They've got hundreds of catchers they see. They're not going to remember everybody. And it gives them a level of comfort when you reassure them what your name is. Then they go, oh, Brett, hey, great to see you again. And they probably remembered your face, but obviously keeping track of everybody's names is tough. So, really reiterating, your name and the conversation, maybe that you had before and what you talked about. But as you kind of develop a little bit more of a relationship, I think a big key is honesty, and I think that's something. And, John Baker played at Cal and a former big leaguer, and he's with the Cubs now doing mental stuff. And he comes to our camp every year. And this year me and him were hanging out the night before and we're talking. And he said, I think some of the best relationships I had with umpires was I was honest with them. And even if it was a benefit for me, if I got a strike, and they say, was that there? And I would say, no, you know what? I think that was a little bit off. And I think that honesty can go a long way, as opposed to trying to be like, no, 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 man, you got it right. You're good. You're good. I think just that kind of vulnerability, that brutal honesty, and just asking some questions. Hey, where was that? Did you have that a little off? And be candid. Say like, hey, I think I had that on the white. Do you think that was off? Like, yeah, maybe a little black, and again, you can have some candid conversations about it.
Yeah.
But obviously, the relationship is fragile too. So, we've got to make sure that our emotions are in check, and which was, I had a strong ability to communicate, but I also had a weak ability to, control my emotions at times. So, it's one of those things you got to kind of balance, when you kind of being a salesman in terms of, hey, you're going to tone it down a little bit, and what you evoke, they're going to bring back to you. So when you start to get loud and frustrated, they're going to get loud and frustrated. And when you can, see a guy get into a volatile situation, an umpire, and come back and bring it to something different, and keep your voice down, your tone of your voice down, little things like that can really help, kind of bring him down with you. So I think there's just the reality is just, treat them like they're people. I mean, it's so funny that, being an umpire is brutal, man. Like, it's like literally like, and it was in this conversation with Bake, it was so funny because he's like, in what world are you allowed to literally just like run up and like yell in a dude's face? He's like, in any other situation, like that person's punching you in the face. I mean, like, you're not allowed to do that in every single everyday life, right?
Yeah.
But these guys are punching bags, and it's the idea that like make them feel like they're more than than just the guy that facilitates the game. Make them feel like they're a part of the game. And it's difficult because there's umpires that are just absolutely, terrible and don't belong there. But at the end of the day, that's kind of where it gets fun. I mean, if you don't really enjoy the idea of like, man, this guy sucks, how do I get him to where I need him to be? Then, it's probably not the position for you. I mean, we can't just sit back there and complain and complain. It's like, just like we talk about as coaches, the idea that like, man, I can't get through to this guy, and, we can't just throw our hands up. It's like, okay, well, let's do something different. Let's figure it out. And that's where the fun really starts.
No question. No question. And I think, like I said, we talk about relationship with the pitcher, relationship with your coach, and I think the one that we all miss is that relationship you have with that umpire. I think is just, it's key, and I think you really did a great job of explaining that. Now, the one thing that's been in vogue the last, I don't know, 2-3 years is the one knee setup. What are your thoughts on the traditional stand up and we're talking with nobody on, one knee setup versus the 2 feet on the ground?
Again, I think it's just a case by case thing. I think it's our job as coaches to expose them to everything.
Mm-hmm.
To have them try everything, to have them push through, uncomfortability to actually give it a chance.
Sure.
Everybody's really comfortable going to their left knee, but when they go their right knee down, all of a sudden things feel a little uncomfortable. And, rather than, letting them just be like, oh, I don't like the right, I'm going to stick to the left. It's like, no, let's work through it. What doesn't work, what feels weird about it. We've got to continue to do it. But again, it's just a matter of, am I a better receiver from that position? So that's, again, all we're trying to focus on is how do we receive the best we can. And, I think with nobody on base, the blocking aside, we're not throwing anybody out. It's just so important to be in the best position to receive that we possibly can. And, the first thing we talk about in terms of receiving is just understanding what allows us to be strong. So the idea that, am I manipulating the ball or is the ball manipulating me?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that is that, no matter how fast that thing's going, it's moving down. And I have to counteract that. So I have to be below the baseball. And when my pocket hits it, I want to be working at the same direction and angle that thing came in. So if I lack some flexibility, it's definitely going to clear me some space to get my glove down, feel comfortable staying down. there's a huge balance factor to it. I mean, when we go to a knee, we're anchored to the ground. We're no longer focused on, you know, am I balanced? I'm shifting my weight from one side to the other. I'm getting up on my toes. And the biggest thing about balance is that anytime we lose balance, we come to the center of our body. So this is where we create balance, where everything is comfortable, is right here. Well, if we know we need to be underneath that pitch to receive it and my target's got to be down and work below it, if I lose any bit of balance, the first thing that's going to create balance is the glove coming to my chest. Mm-hmm. So as that glove comes up to my chest, I'm now eliminating so many pitches I can get underneath and get for strikes. So guys who have less flexibility, if we can anchor them to the ground with one knee down, makes them much better receivers. Honestly, guys with great flexibility, when we drop them to a knee, I mean, that umpire feels like his face is in the strike zone. And there's nothing better than that guy really being able to see everything and almost every pitch looking like it's from the logo of your chest protector and up, no matter, you know, the height of the actual pitch. So it's, you know, again, it's case by case. I think it's one of those, you know, one of those things that we've got to, you know, focus on, you know, who can do what and when can they do it, and understanding the game and understanding what's important. And, you know, I think as it evolves into, hey, maybe I want to do it with runners on base, I think it's something that it can be evolved into that. And we're seeing that more in the big leagues. But the reality is we've got to find some comfort in it. So I always urge guys, and this was a conversation I had with Tony, number one, do it as much as you feel comfortable with nobody on base, because then what's going to happen is you're going to feel comfortable. Balls are going to start to go in the dirt. And you're just going to turn your glove over and you're going to start blocking them. And then you're going to kind of go, oh, I can block pitches when I'm down in this stance, and it's right. Not that difficult. But I think the big one where it starts to see a transition, and again, back to talking to Tony Arnrich about it one day, was, you know, doing it with 2 strikes. Because 2 strikes, we know the idea, we got to block it for the drop third strike. But now we give that pitcher the ability to throw a 2-strike pitch and not just a breaking ball in the dirt, you know, just like, hey, throw it in the dirt, see if he chases. It's like, no, dude, like, throw the shit out of a slider to the black, and I'm in a position to stick this thing and receive it. And if it goes in the dirt, I'm still there too. But then it's the idea that when it does come into the blocking aspect, is that if a guy's going to swing, it's probably going to be over the plate. So there's not going to be a ton of range of motion needed. And then the idea that if a guy swings, you know, on a drop third strike, it's, you know, swing, oh, ball's over there, oh, now I start running. Even if that ball kicks 10, 15 feet away from you, you're going to have plenty of time to go get it and throw a guy out. So runners on base, obviously, they're trying to see down angle. They're trying to get as early as they can, and it makes it a little more difficult. But when you do it with 2 strikes, you really start to feel a little bit more of the comfortability of that, especially with the blocking aspect of it. And then you start to go, I mean, I think I can block here. And then, again, just throwing out the idea that every block's got to look, you know, boom. Yeah. And the idea that a block is something that's kept in a position that we can make a play on it. And sometimes that's just my glove. And, you know, the conversations when we post stuff on here, and, you know, we get so much about that kind of the old school mentality of that's lazy and how do you block from there? And, you know, the idea is that, like, we don't have a ton of range of motion blocking from any stance. Like, if a guy throws a ball in the opposite batter's box, like, I'm goalie, I'm just trying to get my hands over and do something anyways. So, you know, people saying like, oh, he can't get over there. It's like, well, no, but he can't get over there in any stance. So I'm not going to concern myself with that pitch, but he might throw a dirty slider to the black that I want to be able to get underneath, work back to the plate, and get that strike 3 call. And now the 0-2 pitch where we just throw the ball in the dirt, kick that hitter's ability to understand probably fastball coming next. And then the idea of the pitch count going up, as opposed to being like, dude, throw this to the black. I'm going to stick it for a strike. If it's, you know, work it back for a strike. And if it's in the dirt, I'll be there. Just don't miss out over the plate. And, you know, we give pitchers the ability to, again, locate in so many different areas, as opposed to, especially at the younger levels, you know, you've seen so much of this. It's breaking ball for a strike or it's breaking ball in the dirt, and there's no in between. Right. And I think when we can get into that one knee stance where I'm able to basically get my glove on the ground and work through those breaking pitches down, I mean, it's just a whole nother level in terms of giving confidence to that pitcher to not, you know, it's always like, be a good blocker so the pitcher has the confidence to throw in the dirt. It's like, I want to be a good blocker, but an exceptional receiver that the guy knows that he can throw one down and out on the black and it's going to be a strike, not drag me out of the zone and I got no shot.
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to one of the first things you said that I've certainly learned out of this conversation, Brett, is being offensive as a catcher. You know, hey, pump that pitch on the zone and on the black. I got you. Don't worry about it. And then if now you're getting that pitcher in the mindset of, hey, throw the heck out of it for a strike, and if it does bounce for whatever reason, I'm there, rather than, hey, just throw it in the dirt. Let's see if he'll chase it.
Definitely. And I think understanding as it kind of evolves from 2 strikes to wanting to do it with guys on base, just understand the situation and what's more important at that point in time. Is it more important? Again, is it more important I drop to a knee with 2 outs in a 1-1 count with a guy on first because I really want this count to flip to 1-2 instead of 2-1? And if the guy maybe I'm going to be able to block it. But if I don't and the guy goes to second base, we're 1-2. We have an advantage now on the hitter, as opposed to I lost the strike, guy's on first base, but it's 2-1.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's I think flipping counts is the most important thing. And, we got a guy on second base with 2 outs. Well, a hit scores him from there, hit scores him from third. It's more important that I get to advantage counts in my favor and receive the best I can and not be just strictly focused with that blocking mindset.
That's a great point. Certainly this has been one of the most challenging times in not only for you and me, but the country and obviously the world, with everybody being sheltered in place. Talk to us about what are some things that you're telling your catchers that they can do right now to get themselves better at, the mental game or just catching in general. What are some things that people can do at home right now?
I mean, mental game is big. I think really kind of focusing on routine is the most important thing for me. So, I get a bunch of messages on here. What are drills I should be doing? Blah, blah, blah. Look, you guys out there, the drills. I mean, we do them all the time. You do them all the time. If it's not with us, you do them with someone else. You might see us do drills. And now it just turns from it's not on the machine. It's, a wall ball. The first year we did the camp, we gave out lacrosse balls with the idea of we had our fitness guy talk about, breaking up scar tissue and using it for stretching purposes. But it's a no excuse ball, man. You got no excuse. All you need is a wall and you can receive a million pitches and you can do blocks and you can do transfers and you can do everything that you need to do off of that. But all of that is secondary to the idea that we now don't have a schedule set for us. Mm-hmm. You're a 16-year-old kid and that you go to school from 7:30 to 3:30. At 3:30, you go to practice for 2 hours. You're done at 5:30. Maybe you hang out, do some extra hitting. You go home, you do your homework, you get up, you go to class, and it's the same thing every single day. And that's, extrinsic motivation. That's, outside factors are motivating us. When I coached for Doug Williams at College of San Mateo, he was so good at this stuff and always talked about cultivating intrinsic motivation. But it's the idea that here you are, now you have no extrinsic motivation. You have nobody telling you where to be, what to do. You've got to come up with a plan. You've got to figure out what you need to get better. You need to figure out when you're going to do it to get better. And then you need to execute it, which is, I'm 34 years old. And let me tell you, I'm not executing it all the time. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do, it's something that, but if we can cultivate that at a young age, this is such an incredible opportunity for kids. We always ran summer classes from 9 to noon twice a week. And the whole idea was there's no reason for you guys to sleep until 10 or 11 and screw around and play some video games. And then by 1 or 2, you decide you're going to go do something. It's get up, get productive, get to work. Now you're done by 11 or noon. And you've got your whole day ahead of you with such an incredible mindset. The idea that you were productive, you got it done. And now you're going to be productive in other aspects of your life. So if you can, and I'm not asking guys to get up at 5 a.m., go run the hill. It's just the idea of, can you literally just write down a plan of what you want to do to get better? And, anybody can go on Excel and create a weekly plan and times on the side and the days and block what you want to do. Again, this is what Doug used to do at CSM. And he'd be like, we're not telling you to stop your lives. Block out the things that are important to you. Hey, the NFL draft's tomorrow from 5 to 8. Block it off. I'm going to watch the NFL draft at that time. But I got to know that because I want to draft at that time, and if I normally have something at that time, I've got to make up for it somewhere else.
Yep.
But cultivating that intrinsic motivation and not doing it just because you're, taking a video and throwing it on social media to make sure everybody knows you're working. It's really an understanding of the work is yours. Your career is yours. Everything is yours. You own it. What people perceive you as and what you do is so irrelevant. And I think as adults now and having more life experience, we understand that so much.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't when we were younger. It was difficult. So, the opportunity right now is in, can I get myself to say, hey, you know what, regardless of what's going on, I'm in bed by 10, I'm going to wake up by 8. I'm going to, first thing I'm going to do, maybe get a little something in me, get a little workout in. I'm going to hit 150 baseballs, focusing on middle op today. Tomorrow it'll be working on an inside pitch. Then I'm going to receive 1,000 baseballs, throwing the ball off the wall. I mean, if you can just write it down, the accountability factor is insane because you write it down and you have to look at it. And if you did it, you're like, man, I'm the freaking man, dude. And if you didn't, Doug used to always talk about, putting on your mirror in your bathroom, and is called the toothbrush test, where it's like, every day you're, brushing your teeth, you got to look at that thing, and either you look in the mirror and puff your chest out like you're the man, or, you look down and spit your toothpaste into the drain, because that's where, your career's going if you're not taking care of everything that you're doing. And I used to just love the stuff that he would talk about with that, and have really tried to incorporate that in what we're doing with these guys. And this time I literally have beg of guys. I mean, if you're listening, just literally write down what you want to accomplish, put an absolute on it. This is the time I'm doing it. This is how many reps I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And really create a routine for your life. That's so much more important than what drill am I doing? What am I working on? Am I doing enough of this, that? It doesn't matter. Create a routine, because once you get back into your normal everyday life, having that routine is going to be such a beneficial thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think is really important right now is, we need to be held accountable, and we all want to be good baseball players. And this is the time that we can not only work on becoming good baseball players, but becoming good brothers, good husbands, for us. And the biggest thing that I would say is that when we do get back to playing, you'll be able to see who's really worked at it and who hasn't.
Definitely.
Now, we got about 5 to 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get a couple questions in. If anybody has them, pop them down below. But one of the things I love that Brett started doing is he created a YouTube channel, kind of like what I've done, much more professional than I did. But the link to that is in his bio. Talk about the content that you're putting on your YouTube channel, Brett.
Yeah, we we really just, I think, social media can kind of make everybody seem like they know what they're talking about and what they're doing. And and there's, again, great stuff that goes on there. We're fortunate to have it in so many ways with this game. But it's really the idea that we wanted to go directly to the source, get the information from them, and deliver it to the player, to the parent, to other coaches, information that's going to help them. And I think, it's important that, for example, we've started, with 3 guys that are up there right now. Our Coach Esker, the head coach at Stanford, Tony Arnrich, the catching coordinator for the Mariners, and then Marcus Semien, the shortstop for the A's. And, it's amazing. I mean, we went down to spring training, and luckily we went down the first week, because we probably wouldn't have got down if we didn't. But, man, I mean, these guys are just, they're so different in their thought process. And I really want to dive into that, because a lot of times we just see Marcus Semien, the, 25 home runs, on a playoff team playing shortstop. But we don't see the thought process. And, we talked some great stuff with him. He had a terrible first year with the A's, and he talks about a video on there about how important the failure was and how thankful he is that the A's allowed him to fail, that they allowed him to, that he was lucky he was on a crappy team and they allowed him to go out there every single day, and he made 35 errors or whatever that year. But, now here he is. He's in the running for Gold Gloves every year, and shit, he was a finalist for MVP last year. So, and Coach Esker and his thought process on parenting and and what's going on with kids these days and how we have to adapt and not just here, do it my way. And Tony is just so good, and he's just his intellect on humans and we've got 6-10 more guys coming, more big leaguers, coaches, catching coordinators, college coaches. It's going to be awesome. But we want it straight to you guys. We just want the source to be what gives the info, and it's not telephone. When you're a kid, you pass the info around and it changes every single time, because that's what happens. And we just want it straight from the source. We don't care who it comes from. We just care that it gets to you.
Yeah, and I think that, I listened to the conversation with Esky, and, I was on the coaching staff at Stanford with Coach Marquis his last year, and the difference between, our staff and what Esky was doing, different personalities, same intent of where you wanted to go, but different areas and ways to go about it. And the conversation with Esky was tremendous. And the one with Marcus Simeon, for those of people that aren't A's fans, I remember watching him his first year going, every ground ball it wasn't even, is he going to throw it to first on time? It was, can he just catch it first? And then it was, God, is he going to throw it to first? And now, that mindset that he talked about was just, it was spot on. And that's the thing I love about what you're doing on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, we're pumped about it. Check it out, because it's pretty fun, and we got a bunch coming down the line here. We've still got a bunch in the bank, so luckily we don't have to go out and try to find it in these days.
No question. Brett, how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in getting into your development programs? The facility you're at is tremendous. Talk about that and where they can find you online.
Yeah, catchingacademy.com. We've got all the info on there. info@catchingacademy.com. You can obviously DM us here, Twitter. Again, we're on YouTube, Facebook, we're everywhere. But, we're fortunate now. Last summer, I took over a facility in San Ramon. Brad Wellman, former big leaguer, just incredible teacher, ran a facility forever and was ready to retire into the sunset. And I was fortunate to take over. So we've got a great facility at Wellman Sports. And, obviously now that I've took over, I've really geared it towards having everything that we need in terms of our development of catchers. And, we're fortunate. We got great hitting instructors in there. We got a great pitching instructor. We do great softball stuff in there. So check that out too, wellmansports.com. All our information is on there too. But, yeah, please reach out. Obviously we just love working with guys, and the atmosphere in the shop is just, it's contagious. It's so much fun in there.
Yeah, and I think it's, I started this conversation off with you, Brett, that, trying to find the best, the brightest minds out there, but the guys that want to give back and really help educate people. And, from everything you're doing, from your YouTube channel to your development classes to just being on and being frank and talking to people about, hey, forget about the drills and everything right now. Get yourself on a great plan and program. Those are the things that I think that are so key and critical in this process of developing as a player and as a human being.
Definitely.
Well, I appreciate the time today, Brett. I'll get this up on our YouTube channel or my YouTube channel and send out a link to you and put it on my all my social media. But I really appreciate you jumping on with us today. And if you guys have more questions, get in touch with Brett. He's the guru of catching. There's a lot of good ones out there, but I consider you probably one of the top guys out there.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for having me. And just as much, guys, Coach Enrique is a great source. Been in the game for a long time and at all different levels, and it was great to be on the recruiting trail with you and always pick your brain when we were out there. But he's got some great stuff on there in terms of the college recruiting process and how it works. And you have to have been in the process to really understand it, and having recruited for so long, Nick, you do a great job with that stuff. So just as much, guys, be sure to pay attention to what Coach